Is it important to investigate and try to understand other world views or philosophical stances? Is there benefit in trying to see why wrong views are wrong, and how far should one go with this investigation?
Yeah, well, I think that's really the question you want to ask. That's it. How far? It can be some benefit, say for somebody who is not absolutely has no inclination to mentally clarify anything, could encourage some discernment, discrimination on that right level. But yeah, more often than not, it's probably going to be, if you go too far, it's going to be just a waste of time. It's going to be revolving around satisfying your mental craving for mental clarity and views. The point is, even if you do investigate these things, you do so just so you're a step closer to uproot your suffering, not to have a satisfying standpoint. So you really don't want to go too far. So if you recognize yourself as somebody who has a tendency to go there, then you probably shouldn't do any of it. If you recognize yourself as somebody who doesn't want to think about any other views, then maybe you should, just to challenge your own views to see whether you actually understood something, or you're just complacent about it because you never challenge what your understanding is, if there is any.
Because there's so many different views, and it's like a never-ending.
It is a never-ending
journey into
I mean, if your goal is to address every wrong view, well, you're never going to finish that work. So, in other words, if you do go into exploring, never lose the context as to why you're doing it, for the sake of your own freedom from suffering and understanding, not for the sake of developing superior standpoints and so on. If that happens, that's a side effect.
Winning battles.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not about that.
Very good. The second question relates to this sutta that I'll read out. Bhikkhus, there are these three kinds of suffering. What three? Suffering due to pain, suffering due to sankharas, formations, activities,
determinations.
Suffering due to change. So, dukkha, suffering due to pain. Sankhara dukkha, suffering due to sankharas, formations. Viparinama dukkha, suffering due to change. There are these three kinds of suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path is to be developed for direct knowledge of these three kinds of suffering, for the full understanding of them, for their utter destruction and for their abandoning. So, I believe the person wanted to know, if one becomes an arahant, is all these sufferings gone?
No, suffering is gone on account of all these things. Not all these things are gone.
So pain is
not gone. Change is not gone. Sankharas are not gone. Suffering on account of it is gone. So, how much of a pain will be painful when you don't suffer on account of it? How much of a change would be painful when you don't suffer on account of it? And how much sankharas would be causing you discomfort when you don't suffer on account of it? Well, become an arahant and you'll see.
Yeah, it's kind of, if you're not even close to becoming an arahant.
Yeah, you can't even theoretically grasp it correctly, because if you do, you will be at least a Satipatthana, understanding what freedom from suffering is. So the point is, it's not there is no change, or there is no sankharas, or there is no bodily discomfort and pain left for an arahant. It's just there's no suffering on account of anything. Because that's what it says. These three types of suffering are three bases on account of which a suffering can manifest for a mind that hasn't developed a Noble Eightfold Path. That's it. Develop the Noble Eightfold Path, suffering cannot manifest on account of any of the three bases of suffering.
Because like the arahant's declaration, it's at the end of some suttas, which is there's just this this body.
What suffering has left, it's on account of this body until it breaks apart. That's the only suffering I have to endure till I going to Parinibbana, basically.
Like basic discomfort.
Yeah, the remnant. This body is the remnant of the previous stuff, and until it sort of exhausts itself and dies, there will be some burden, discomfort, nuisance on account of it. But none of that is a base for mental suffering. He's freed. And he knows that. That's why he will dwell happily in Nibbana here and now, with this, body that's about to break apart.
Could you describe the difference between Citta and Dhamma in terms of Satipatthana? Those two terms in the Satipatthana.
So practically speaking, Citta is found where you feel. Dhamma as a phenomena is found where you think, where the mental activity is. So Citta is on the level of pretty much your attitude towards pleasant, unpleasant and neutral. That's where your Citta is, in the broadest sense. Mano and Dhamma is literally what your mind revolves around. Dhammas are what you're thinking, thoughts, which might be on account of what you're feeling, but Citta is the kind of the attitude, the underlying attitude towards what you're feeling, something you're not explicitly thinking in terms of phenomena. So as I said, overall mood is where you look for Citta. But what your mind revolves around, that's where these Dhammas are. So yes, you have to take care of these things equally. Make sure you're not acting out of your moods, but then make sure don't just let your mind revolve around Dhammas that are not suitable.
You just, be aware of the mood.
Well, yeah, be aware of the mood. If there is aversion
Thoughts.
towards the displeasure, don't cultivate the aversion. If there is elation, delight towards pleasure, don't cultivate it, don't act out of it. If there is kind of indolence towards the neutral, just want to go, distract yourself asleep, don't give in to that either. That's working on Citta pretty much. And so how do you not give into aversion of Citta towards what you're feeling? Well, by not accepting the Dhammas of angry kind that your mind revolves around. How do you not give in to the delight of Citta towards pleasure and pleasurable prospects? By not accepting the Dhammas of sensuality. Then the mind revolves around.
By not daydreaming.
By not daydreaming, yeah, when you're bored or distracted. Yeah.